Chapter 3, The Surprising Scientific History. It begins with a quote from John F. Kennedy: "Anyone who can solve the problems of water will be worthy of 2 Nobel Prizes, one for peace and one for science." To begin the chapter. In the mainstream public, there seems to be 3 schools of thought regarding water's structuring capacities. One group accepts the explanations given by documentaries such as Water, the Great Mystery, the works of Masaru Emoto, or the marketers of structured water products. Another group echoes the sentiments of Snow Crystal author Kenneth Lebrecht of Caltech University, who essentially says, "Don't be ridiculous, it's just water." The third group has no idea altogether and has likely never even heard of structured water before. But this is amongst the mainstream public, whose opinions and ideas are often predetermined by media influence and exposure. What about the scientists? The relationship between scientists and structured water goes back much further than any mainstream public exposure. In fact, the structure of water has a long history with the Nobel Prize, prestigious scientific journals, and documented credible research, making one wonder how so many can be critical of its discussion. 3 Nobel Prizes were awarded in the 1990s for work relating to clustered, organized, or structured water, namely involving DNA, intracellular fluids, cellular communication, and protein folding. They discovered that healthy DNA is surrounded by water in a crystalline matrix, that is, structured water, an incredible finding that will be expanded upon in later chapters. Notice that these discoveries related to structured water have to do with the critical functions of structured water within living organisms, from cellular communication to DNA integrity. As it turns out, Nobel Prize laureates have known for quite some time that the structure of our bio-water, the water within our bodies, is highly organized and crystalline in nature, and that this intelligent organization is critical to every single biochemical electroreaction in the body. This is in no way any form of pseudoscience, rather it is science at its finest. Dr. Albert Szent-Györgyi, who won the Nobel Prize in 1937 for vitamin C and is held as the father of biochemistry, long recognized the importance of the structure of the water within our cells. He scoffed at mainstream science's ignorance of this fact, stating, "Biology has forgotten the intracellular water, or it did not discover it as yet." Dr. Szent-Györgyi went further, acknowledging the critical role of structured cellular waters and our development of understanding. This is a quote: "Since the structure of water is the essence of all life, the man who can control that structure in cellular systems will change the world." End of the quote. This statement by Dr. Szent-Györgyi was decades ahead of other scientists and is still ahead of many today. It was not, however, ahead of one of his peers, whose work likely influenced Dr. Szent-Györgyi's. Fellow Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling remains the only man to receive 2 unshared Nobel Prizes, and one of the only 2 people in the world to receive 2 shared Nobel Prizes. In 1935, Pauling presented his theories on water's memory, one of its most amazing properties wherein water rearranges its structure of molecular arrangement in order to encode, transmit, and integrate new information akin to storing memory. His concepts behind anesthesia and the water molecules in the brain are only just now becoming celebrated by neuroscientists who finally have access to technology which supports his understanding. He postulated his theory on water structure long before it was demonstrated by Jacques Benveniste, and more recently by a group of French physicists whose research in the late 1980s on structured water led to the conclusion that the configuration of molecules in water was biologically active. In demonstrating that the arrangement of molecules of water was biologically active, what Jacques Benveniste was really saying was that the structure of water had an effect on living organisms. These findings lent support to the tradition of homeopathy, a method of natural healing which uses incredibly diluted solutions of organic materials such as plants, diluted to the point where only water remains and none of the original matter. This water dilution is then used as the remedy. Because all we can detect in the substance is water, Up to this point, there was no scientific support that one remedy was any different from another remedy. And yet, if a person had malaria and took the homeopathic remedy for scarlet fever, it would do nothing. However, if the person took the homeopathic remedy proper for their condition, in this case for malaria, they would be cured. How could this be? Both substances were assumed to be simple water and having no particle matter of the plant itself, not even a single atom. There is nothing that would suggest the remedies were any different from each other than the impressive anecdotal evidence for homeopathy. The reason the substances are different is because they carry different structural patterns and arrangements in their water molecules, which has a profound impact on health. This is what Benveniste was referring to when he discussed the configuration or shape of water molecules as being biologically active, that is, having an effect on living organisms. Unfortunately, Benveniste, like many others, was highly persecuted by the professional community for such fringe notions, and his publications were removed from the prestigious scientific journal Nature in which they had been published. Still, experiments demonstrating water's memory have continued, as have the search for the answers as to why water exhibits this ability, what applications this knowledge can have, and what larger implications this may present for our understanding of ourself, our lives, our environments, and our universe. Nearly all of the scientific discovery and contributions regarding structured water have stayed under the public's radar and out of the mainstream media and the realm of general information. It has also, for the most part, stayed very chemical-physical, discussing the properties of structured water while largely staying out of the realm of memory, consciousness, or homeopathy. Theories about how water is able to express so many unexpected and anomalous properties are still being formulated, and it was not until 2001 that an article was published in the prestigious scientific journal Nature, which successfully demonstrated, through computer simulation, that water's anomalous properties, quote, arise from water's propensity for organization and structure, end quote. The work was also featured in the Princeton Weekly Bulletin, and structured water scientists everywhere were likely shaking their heads in amazement at the elementary level at which so many scientists continue to operate. This is certainly important research, exampled by the article's implication of the many potentials for use in the preservation of pharmaceutical drugs, considering that organizing and structuring water in a specific fashion alters its properties to such a degree as to promote stable preservation of substances. What is disappointing, though, is that the article quotes a Boston University professor as, quote, an authority on the anomalous properties of water, end quote, who states that the researchers, quote, linked ideas that no one had ever dreamed were related, end quote. To all structured water scientists, this is insulting, because it implies that the discovery that water's structure is responsible for its anomalous properties is somehow a novel idea. The computer simulation, perhaps, is a novel development, but the links between the recognized and unrecognized anomalous properties of water as rising from its propensity for structure and organization have been made for decades. Meanwhile, other research indicates that the possibilities of structured water appear limitless, as recently demonstrated by Luc Montagnier, a Nobel Prize-winning biologist, in a stunning and fascinating experiment. Montagnier successfully conducted an experiment in which DNA appeared to replicate itself between the test tubes through the water. In the experiment, Montagnier and his team took two test tubes, one containing a tiny piece of bacterial DNA and the other containing pure water, and surrounded them with a weak electromagnetic field that is similar to the energy waves naturally emitted by the Earth. The results of their experiment were phenomenal and speak volumes towards confirming what so many people are already understanding about water and energy transference, demonstrating long-held and long-denied theories. While we will explore electromagnetic fields and frequencies more later on, let us take a moment to more clearly define and understand these terms. These words have made their way out of the scientific arena and are becoming much more common to the general public as people begin to develop and use the language necessary to creatively explore, discuss, and expand our knowledge of these concepts. In essence, Everything emits vibrating waves of energy. We refer to these as electromagnetic fields or electromagnetic frequencies, but they are really just vibrating patterns of energy waves, which are both electric and magnetic in nature, hence the term electromagnetic. All perceivable energies in the universe are considered electromagnetic energies, and this relationship is inseparable. You cannot generate electricity without also having a corresponding magnetic field, and every magnetic field also carries electric energy. These vibrating waves of electric and magnetic energy can be measured by how many times the wave pattern repeats itself in a single second, which is called its Hertz value. Thus, 1 Hertz, or 1 Hz, is 1 cycle of the pattern per second, while 7 Hertz is 7 repetitions of the pattern per second. The electromagnetic field used by Montagnier was 7 Hertz, which repeats its wave pattern 7 times every second and is very close to the same electromagnetic frequency or vibrating energy emission that is generated by Earth's electromagnetic field. The vibrating energies emitted by the Earth's electromagnetic field reverberate or resonate in the Earth's ionosphere. This means that the energy waves emitted from the Earth echo, in a sense, in the ionosphere around our planet, the way the sound of a church bell resonates in the cathedral, or the sound of an opera singer reverberates and echoes in a concert hall. Here there is a graphic figure showing hertz and pattern repetition. To continue. Vibrating energy waves, measured by the number of repetitions per second of their specific pattern, are assigned a number on the electromagnetic scale according to this pattern. The electromagnetic scale is the ruler of measurement for all types of perceivable energies, which is to say that all perceivable energies are both electric and magnetic in nature and can thus be assigned a number on the ruler. This number is referred to as its frequency. For example, the frequency of your radio station, where 92.5 is a specific electromagnetic wave pattern projected through the air. Visible and non-visible lights are certain frequencies, or vibrating energy wave patterns, as is audible sound for the human ear, or the unique frequency on which your cell phone operates. Observations of the frequency, or the vibrating wave pattern, emitted by the Earth's electromagnetic field were first documented by Nikola Tesla in 1899. It was this observation that allowed Tesla to form the basis for his idea of wireless energy transmission, the original Wi-Fi, using the Earth's natural extremely low frequencies. Tesla was successful in utilizing the Earth's naturally resonating energy emissions and created successful free wireless energy transmission long before today's Wi-Fi, capable of powering all cities and even vehicles with abundant, free, and natural wireless energy transmission, as he demonstrated numerous times before the American Institute of Electrical Engineers at Columbia College in 1891. Again, while powering the entire Chicago's World Fair in 1893, and also to the National Electric Light Association that same year. In 1896, he succeeded in wireless transmission over a 48-kilometer distance, about 30 miles. The concept of transmitting energy wirelessly using the Earth's naturally occurring vibrating energy emissions, or waveforms, is significant on its own, even without Tesla's genius of tapping into the energy produced by the lightning in our ionosphere to generate free energy. The wireless energy transmission systems of today use much faster energy waves in the several hundreds of gigahertz, meaning they are billions of cycles per second and are in the microwave range, as in microwave cookers, rather than extremely low frequency of the Earth's natural average of 7.83 cycles per second wave emissions, also called the Schumann resonance, after the German physicist Winfried Schumann. These extremely high-frequency electromagnetic fields, which are increasingly projected into our environments and communities at unprecedented rates, are artificially created, and their use is extremely controversial. They have been repeatedly found to be destructive to our health and consciousness, the mechanics of which will be explained in this book, and we are being continually and exponentially exposed to such frequencies without our knowledge or permission. Extremely low frequencies, however, like those of the Earth's natural electromagnetic field vibration, are found to not only be beneficial for life, but also necessary for its support. Experiments where plants, animals, and individuals were denied exposure to the Schumann resonance of Earth's natural electromagnetic field all resulted in a rapid and steady decline in health until they were again exposed to Earth's electromagnetic field. These types of experiments are only possible through space travel, or the construction of rooms and cages created from materials that will block all forms of electromagnetic radiation, even those from the Earth, referred to as Faraday cages. It has been argued that the severe deterioration of the health and physical condition experienced by the early astronauts were largely the result of being outside of this resonating field, and that this problem was solved by introducing a magnetic pulse generator which simulates the Schumann resonance aboard all space shuttles, emitting energy waves that are similar to those emitted by the Earth. Thus, we see that electromagnetic frequencies can have a massive impact on our health and well-being. Returning to Montagnier's experiment, we find that his use of the same natural energy waves of the Earth was critical to his success. 18 hours later, Montagnier's 2 test tubes, one with a tiny piece of bacteria DNA and the other of the pure water, were examined. What was observed was remarkable, shocking nearly all mainstream scientists while celebrated by nearly all fringe scientists. After 18 hours of the tubes simply sitting next to each other with the same type of energy waves emitted by the Earth surrounding it, the DNA was now detectable not only in the original test tube which contained it, but also in the test tube containing pure water. The experiment was tested against several other groups with different variables, that is, type of energy wave or duration of time, but the only time the DNA was able to imprint into the other test tube of pure water was when exposed to the same energy wave pattern emitted by the Earth for an 18-hour time span. The implications demonstrated by such an experiment are large and numerous. For one, it indicates a quantum effect, which simply means an event where particles or atoms do not behave according to Newtonian physics and are not obeying the rules. A necessary cumulative effect of time required for success, and potentially even a type of manifestation or teleportation type phenomenon where the DNA was able to manifest or imprint a copy of itself into water across space with no apparent mode of transportation or way of getting there without direct interaction. The problem with accepting such implications are fairly obvious. Quantum phenomena, studied by scientists in a growing field of quantum physics, are assumed to manifest in imperceivable fractions of a second, that is, picoseconds, like 1/1,000,000th of a second, as opposed to growing into manifest over a period of time so extended as 18 hours. They are also typically observable only at extremely low temperatures approaching absolute zero, whereas Montagnier's was conducting his tests in a room temperature environment. Both of these facts are huge contradictions to classical quantum physics theories, and will send them back to the drawing board to revisit some of their primary fundamentals. And because the original DNA sample had to be diluted many times for the experiment to work, it lends great support to the tradition of homeopathy, the specific natural therapy system that was also supported by Benveniste's work. Recall that in homeopathy, a substance is diluted out of a solution into pure water so many times that it becomes chemically undetectable and not a single physical atom of the original substance remains. This, then, is the remedy, pure water considered to have been energetically imprinted or structured with the energetic signature of the original substance. While often ridiculed by Western medicine, which relies on expensive, patentable, and profitable pharmaceutical drugs, homeopathy has a substantial amount of underground support and an impressive history of success. Homeopathy has a long-standing presence in Britain's national healthcare system, with over 40% of doctors referring patients to homeopathic physicians, and the support and use of homeopathy by the British royal family since the 1830s. In Europe, homeopathic medicine is so widely practiced by physicians, it is no longer appropriate to consider it alternative medicine, used regularly by 30% of French doctors and 20% of German doctors, while nearly half of Dutch physicians consider them effective. In Montagnier's experiment, the DNA was energetically copied into the water much in the way that homeopathic remedies are energetically imprinted. That is to say, they are structurally encoded into the water, the mechanics of which will be discussed in the next chapter as we explore water's propensity to exhibit a liquid crystal state. Here, the structure of the water and its arrangement of molecules had been changed or encoded with the information of the DNA or the homeopathic remedy. Because the original DNA sample was so highly diluted, it couldn't be chemically detected. Thus, when it came time to examine the test tube of pure water for the presence of DNA, the scientists used a method of adding enzymes to the water in order to see if they would react to the presence of DNA, called the polymerase chain reaction, polymerase referring to the type of enzyme used. When the enzymes were added to the test tube of pure water, they reacted as if they were in the presence of DNA, and thus the scientists concluded that the highly diluted DNA was actually present in the water. When one is familiar with the science of structured water, as you will be after reading this book, it is easy to understand that the information of the DNA was encoded into the pattern and the intelligent arrangement of the water molecules themselves, and may not have been actually present in protein form. Because it is the structure of a substance that is important in chemical reactions and not its actual chemical ingredients, the structure of the DNA information in the water was the only thing necessary for the enzymes to initialize a reaction. Because the water molecules themselves had become arranged and shaped with the information of the DNA, which is really all that matters. That is the structure rather than the chemical ingredients that determine chemical reactions will be supported and expanded upon in further chapters. Here we will simply state the fact. In the early 1980s, prior to Bienveniste and long before any of today's science and remarkable demonstrations of structured water phenomenon, Dr. Marcel Vogel, former IBM researcher and world-renowned crystallographer, was studying the relationship between water and consciousness, particularly the effect of consciousness on the structure of water. While working for IBM for nearly 30 years, Marcel Vogel developed the technology behind today's liquid crystal displays, phospholuminescence, and magnetic hard drive encodings, fathering much of today's crystal and computer-based technology. He left IBM to further investigate the water and consciousness connection, as well as the connection between consciousness, energy, and living organisms, which led him to collaborate with Cleve Baxter in the phenomenal work demonstrating the deeply connected consciousness of plants using lie detectors. Dr. Vogel began successfully using spectrophotometers to measure changes in waters in reaction to thought and intention, demonstrating water's liquid crystal properties in response to consciousness and energy. He continued to further explore the implications and applications of these properties before his death in 1991. Prior to his death, Marcel developed tools with water resonance, discussed in later chapters, which allow for greater information transfer to the water and thus to the bodies of individuals for healing. These tools held great potentials for the ability to deliver specific frequencies and information to an individual, and even held potentials as a delivery system for pharmaceutical drug information, which could allow patients to require less or no ingestion of the drug itself while still receiving its therapeutic benefits. Unfortunately, Dr. Vogel had an untimely heart attack just 6 months after discussing these potentials, preventing him from its further development. But the phenomena of water's responsiveness to consciousness finally gained mainstream attention some 13 years later through the work of Masaru Emoto, featured in the hit film What the Bleep Do We Know?, a mainstream documentary discussing consciousness and quantum physics. Dr. Emoto specialized in taking photographs of ice crystals to demonstrate the effects of various stimuli, consciousness, language, intention, music, environment, etc., on water, by flash freezing it into its solid crystalline state in order to view the change in molecular formation after exposure to the stimulus. In the 1960s, Dr. Bernard Grad at the McGill University in Montreal stumbled upon water's ability to store information and charge while researching psychic phenomena. Grad was more interested in researching whether or not psychic healers were working outside of the realm of placebo effects, rather than studying the water itself. But his studies and findings are quite exemplary of water's ability to change with consciousness and intention. Grad conducted multiple well-designed experiments demonstrating that healers and also magnetic fields had positive effects on water as measured through its ability to accelerate plant growth. He also inadvertently demonstrated the destructuring abilities of negative energies on the structure of water's molecular arrangement by having the water treated intentionally by severely depressed psychiatric patients, as opposed to a healer's intentions, and examining the rate of growth suppression in seedlings. Chemical analysis on the water treated by healers and or magnets indicated it had been structured. Infrared spectroscopy revealed the atomic bond angle of the water had shifted and surface tension had been reduced, both indicating structural changes in the molecular formation. Several researchers since, including Douglas Dean and Edward Brame, as well as Stephen Schwartz and others, have replicated Grad's findings of changes in water treated by healers. Grad's work primarily focused on healers and psychics rather than exploring or discussing the method of action of water's reaction to different consciousness stimuli. Benveniste's work was criticized for the language within its publication that provided support for the fundamental theory behind homeopathy, the description of the water being biologically active, but had little to do with the responsiveness of water to consciousness. Dr. Marcel Vogel's work, on the other hand, demonstrated quite clearly and scientifically water's responsiveness to consciousness and intention. Today, the work of Dr. Masaru Emoto, as well as other less well-known researchers, provides us with visual representations and aids to support our understanding of the amazing phenomena of water's responsiveness. Emoto's work is mainly criticized for not being scientific enough, for not following proper scientific methods, and for publishing his work privately rather than publicly, where it could go under the intense scrutiny, like Benveniste's, desired by the mainstream scientific world. He is also criticized for having been excessively selective about those working on his project, as traditional science says his experiments should be repeatable and not dependent on the individuals conducting the experiment. These criticisms, however, hold little weight when viewed holistically and are truly not well-founded skepticism. Anyone familiar with scientific persecution, such as that experienced by Benveniste and countless others, can empathize with Emoto's decision for private publication. More importantly, quantum physics now confirms that the observer directly affects the outcome manifested in reality. Under this model, we have to accept that the individual conducting an experiment has a measurable effect on the result. Thus, Masaru Emoto has demonstrated an astute understanding of this potential impact. Although formerly not so eloquently put, it appears that Emoto and his team intentionally chose individuals with a high level of consciousness, clarity, and awareness who demonstrate the ability and propensity to be open-minded and harmonious with their work. This is the best type of approach to observing nature, and every naturalist will affirm this. Unfortunately, science, whose entire premise is built on finding the truth through observing nature, operates on principles of a scientific method that is in direct contradiction to this approach. The very basis of predicting an outcome before the event, and then exercising and changing the experiment in order to demonstrate the predicted event, operates directly on observer manifestation, where the scientist is blatantly interfering with the result of an experiment with a predetermined conscious perception, creating immediate bias in the action of the experiment. The criticism aimed at Emoto for selecting specific individuals to conduct the research really demonstrates a prevailing ignorance in the scientific community about how the universe really works, the very thing they are supposed to understand better than most. And while Emoto has also been criticized for not publishing all of the photos taken of specific ice crystals, leading some to theorize that he selectively chose photos that supported his message while omitting ones that didn't, too much similar work has been demonstrated by other researchers. Some, such as Professor Konstantin Korotkov in Russia, has demonstrated remarkably similar photography work, while others, like Laurent Costa of France, has produced photographs of a quite different visual nature from Emoto's. Professor David Schweitzer was likely the first to photograph water's responsiveness to consciousness, and his work predates Emoto's by several years. These men's work and others support Emoto's photographic research with similar observations regarding the structuring or destructuring effects of different stimuli, particularly that of consciousness, on water. The photographic work of such researchers is beautiful and is an invaluable visual aid for viewing the way water expresses the way it is affected by different types of energy and consciousness, but it does little to explain the true meaning, functions, methods, and implications of this phenomenon. Dr. Emoto's work is popular because of these images, but in essence is providing visual aids of research conducted by several individuals that has been going on for decades, and showing photographic evidence of phenomenon already charted. Visual aids are immeasurably helpful, but do little to answer the how and why, and the answer provided by such photographers to the question, what does this mean, is elementary at best. Proponents and authors such as Emoto seem to primarily focus on the most basic and obvious principle that the photographic phenomenon demonstrates, which is to live one's life with thoughts and intentions of love, thanks, and otherwise positive emotions. This is certainly essential to a positive experience of life and physical, emotional, and spiritual health, but this is by no means a new principle. To live life in love and thanks is as ancient a moral as morals themselves, and one that even Western medicine has subscribed to as being good for your health. It does bring more awareness to the effects negative thoughts or energy frequencies may have on us, and while this is all a great message, it does little to discuss what it truly means, that water has such amazing structural capacities, and that this structure directly relates to our consciousness, a discovery that predates Masaru Emoto's work in the modern era of science and research by more than 20 years. Today, Masaru Emoto might be the most popular name in the public attention surrounding this phenomena, but he is only one among many who have and are researching and demonstrating the properties and effects of consciousness and intention on water, and the effects structured water has on health. Researchers at the HeartMath Research Institute are using spectrophotometers and magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, to examine the effects of healers' hands and magnets, as well as the differences between water from various sacred sites, while other developers are working on structuring and distributing their structured water to individuals on a large-scale basis, a challenging task due to water's responsiveness. Another figure on the forefront of modern structured water science is Dr. Gerald Pollack, a professor of bioengineering from the University of Washington. Dr. Pollack acknowledges that the liquid crystalline phase of water, that is, structured water, is much more prevalent than previously thought and is, quote, intimately connected with the generation and preservation of life, end quote. While Marcel Vogel was calling it the liquid crystal mesophase in the late 1980s, today Dr. Pollack refers to it as the fourth phase of water and is oftentimes inaccurately credited with its discovery, which, like Emoto, also predates Dr. Pollack's work by more than 20 years. To quote Dr. Pollack, quote, the water inside your cells is absolutely critical for your health. If you have a pathology of an organ, it's not only the proteins inside that organ that are not working, but also the water inside that organ. That near protein water is not ordered in the way it should be. So what you want to do is reestablish a kind of ordering. If you need that entity to function properly, take a muscle, for example. If the muscle is not functioning, it's the protein and the water that are not functioning. You need plenty of this ordered, structured water and proteins in their right form in order to make the muscle function properly. And that quote is given a date of 2011. End quote. Pollack is absolutely right in that in the instance of pathology, it is not only the proteins that are not functioning, but also the structure of the water. What he does not mention is that the function of the protein is directly dependent upon it being properly structured. That is to say, the protein has to be in the right shape in order to work. In the field of intracellular biology, it has already been demonstrated that the structure of the minimum 10,000 water molecules which surround every protein in the body is not just a major factor in determining the shape of that protein, but may even be directly responsible for its shape. Since water molecules contain anywhere from 6 to 300 units H2O per molecule, we're talking about some 3 million units of H2O surrounding every protein, and sometimes more. Water molecules have been observed to surround proteins in even larger numbers than 10,000. These are the true primary laws of physics, the laws of structure. These laws are meant not to govern in the way our traffic laws govern, but rather are meant to merely describe in a logical and coherent form what we consistently observe in nature. The natural order which scientific law seeks to describe does not cause anything in nature. The order simply is, and everything that naturally occurs is a part of it. The physics and laws demonstrated through structured water science, which involve the laws of patterns and structures, hold vast implications for the potentials of the structure of energy and consciousness. These are the most logical and coherent form of what we consistently observe in nature. Once one understands the true meaning of water, one realizes there is no greater or more principal law of physics than the fundamentals represented in the structure of energy and the structure of water, particularly the bio-water, or the water within our body. It is the fundamental foundation on which all other laws are based, including both the laws of physics and the laws of metaphysics. As Western physicists, cellular biologists, and other scientists slowly come around to acknowledge a fact growing harder to deny with such continuously mounting evidence, researchers in Eastern Europe have taken the study of structured water much farther than most of the United States and Western Europe. Unfortunately, much of it is ignorantly and unjustly criticized and ignored by mainstream science, or is simply unavailable and untranslated. Still, the Russian publications which have been translated, an extremely small percentage of large volumes of work, indicate that their approach to the study of water varies quite differently from published work in the U.S. and Europe, and discusses such aspects of water as its vortexing, superconducting, and energy-generating potentials. As mentioned earlier, Professor Konstantin Korotkov of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, also a professor of physics at St. Petersburg, author of over 70 papers in leading journals in physics and biology, and holder of 12 patents in biophysics inventions, Professor Korotkov has carried out consciousness experiments similar to that of Masaru Emoto. He has also charted other differences in the characteristics of various water samples, that is, changes in surface tensions, effect on plant growth rates, etc., which exhibit similar differences and results as those charted and observed by numerous individuals around the globe. His conclusions that positive and negative emotions have the largest influence on the structure of water represents a scientific breakthrough that has until now been largely unrecognized. This is a quote. "We have carried out many experiments on the effect that quite diverse factors have on samples of water: magnetic fields, electrical fields, various objects, and also including a human presence and human emotions. And it became clear that positive and negative human emotions are the strongest element of influence." That's a quote from Dr. Konstantin Korotkov, Doctor of Sciences, Professor of Physics, Russian Academy of Natural Sciences. To continue. In the Far East, particularly in Japan and Korea, a wide variety of research has also been done on structured and altered water, including water sterilization through exposure to intense magnetic fields and the biological responses to magnetized water exposed to different frequencies and pulse rates. Dr. Mu Shik-jong was president of the Korean Academy of Science and Technology and the honorary chair professor of the Korean Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. He was a very prolific scientist with over 250 publications, most of which were published in American scientific journals. Dr. Jones' research in the realm of structured water, as well as the work of Dr. Yang Oh and Gil-ho Kim, points to evidence that abnormal water structure in the cellular fluids is directly related to the abnormal cellular activity that results in cancer, diabetes, and AIDS. This water is lacking the geometric complexity and the structural integrity exhibited in the biowaters of healthy cells, comparable through NMR technology. Nuclear magnetic resonance technology is similar to the MRI technologies used in most hospitals and allows researchers to view the shape, motion, and composition of molecules. NMR examination of cells infected with HIV reveals the same water environment as those with cancer and diabetes, a lack of organized structure at the cellular level. This is followed by a quote that says, "Cell water is generally different from that of bulk water and becomes more bulk-like in cancer cells." That quote is from Philip Ball, 20-year editor of physical sciences, including biochemistry and quantum physics, scientific journal Nature. And another quote, the hexagonal structure of water.
I need a night custodian in Miss Kelly's office right now, please. Night custodian in Miss Kelly's office right now, please.
Okay, I'm doing this at work, and that was the intercom. So I'm just going to keep going because I put too much time into this. The quote was, the hexagonal structure of water is the one that promotes health and increases longevity. That quote comes from Dr. Yang O, Harvard graduate, retired Baylor Medical School professor. Then there is a graphic, figure 3, that shows a disorganized molecule arrangement and an organized or structured molecule arrangement. To continue, this kind of research is astounding and proves what Dr. Marcel Vogel knew over 30 years ago and what our ancestors have known throughout antiquity. The implication is clear. The disruption in the cellular activity directly relates to the degradation of the cellular waters, degraded from a highly structured liquid crystalline state to one that is disordered and unorganized, becoming more like bulk water. As this type of research shows, our state of health is dependent upon the structure of our water, and the scientific and medical community will have to contend with this fact eventually. As we will later see when we explore our water system in more depth, the structure of our bodily waters, or biowaters, is part of an integral biofeedback system within our body. The function of both our consciousness and our physical system are both reflective of and dependent upon the structure of our biowaters. Thus, affecting the structure of the water in our body has a direct effect on the function of the physical system, as well as our mental and emotional states. Mainstream science and even authorities on water have scoffed at these notions regarding the importance of water's molecular organization and the effect of the dynamic and responsive structural changes it undergoes in response to different stimuli. Structural changes that reflect the energy of the stimuli, whether it is an energy that is supportive for life, i.e. healthy or positive energy, or energy that does not support life and expresses decay, i.e. unhealthy or negative energy. This phenomenon, while apparently new, actually has a well-documented history within the realm of both modern and ancient discovery, and the evidence that critics are required to ignore in order to avoid the obvious and paramount truth about structured water grows more insurmountable with each passing day. And this closes with a quote from Dr. Marcel Vogel, thoughts can change the viscosity of water, its properties, and changes the effect the water has on a living organism. This is followed by a bibliography of articles that were quoted and footnoted in the chapter, but this is the end of chapter 3.